everyone. Welcome to Shell Point Today for Thursday, August 27th. I'm Rich Nation.
And I'm Mary Kay Grimaldi. On today's program, Katelyn Van Scoy will tell us about the upcoming Trinkets and Treasures sale that residents can participate in. And we'll visit with a Shell Point resident who was a radio and communications specialist in World War II to hear his interesting tales of flying high on bombing missions.
But first, we want to remind you of tomorrow's opportunity to enjoy a baseball game in style. Better than enjoying a game in person is enjoying a game in a skybox with a spectacular view. You can take in a Fort Myers Miracle baseball game at the remodeled Twins Stadium tomorrow. Food and drinks will be served in a climate-controlled skybox, or you can enjoy the option of sitting outdoors as well. The cost of the trip is $39, which includes park admission and food and beverages. What a deal! Court pickups for the trip begin on the island at 5:15 p.m. with an approximate return time of 10:35.
Looking ahead, the final summer concert is just around the corner. On September 10th, Dick Hyman will present Big Bands and Combos. This pianist, director, and composer will present a concert of music as well as documentaries and film clips of famous big band recordings, followed by his own solo version. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, be sure to call 454-2067 and get ready as we wrap up the Shell Point Summer Concert Series with a big bang. Or how about Big Band at the Village Church on September 10th.
And finally, one more note to remember. If you are a caregiver, don't forget that you deserve a break too. Shell Point invites all caregivers to take time for yourself. The day respite program at the Arbor allows you the freedom to relax and rejuvenate or to take care of your own medical needs. Start your break today by calling Pat Turner at 454-2292.
Activities Coordinator Katelyn Van Scoy wanted to talk to us about the Trinkets and Treasures sale coming up next month. But first she needs to straighten out somebody about all the details.
Hey, Katelyn.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. What you doing?
It's
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, setting up for Trinkets and Treasures.
Oh, well, you know Trinkets and Treasures isn't until the end of September.
Well, nothing like an early start.
Oh, well, that's true. Well, let's look at some of your stuff you got here.
I got some great stuff.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah.
Okay, great glasses. Oh, some half-eaten mints.
Yeah, I don't like that flavor.
Oh, I don't know if you
Gives me
can
bad
sell
breath.
this. They're half-eaten. That's a
No,
little...
these haven't been eaten though. Just the ones that are
Well,
not in there.
let's put that aside. Let's see what else you have.
I've got some
let's see what
bookshelves. Look at my guitar.
Oh, man, can you play it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's been a while.
Oh. Can we talk about this?
What, the paint?
Yeah.
Those are some great colors. You should see my bedroom.
Oh.
I use them all.
Are these half used?
Yeah,
Oh.
but they're good colors. You know how much you would have to pay for that in the store?
I agree. This is a beautiful color, but you can't sell this.
Why not?
Well, it's half used and it's hazardous.
Man.
So let's take that away. Let's see what else you got. Okay.
Okay.
What's that?
It's a film projector.
No. That.
The hairspray?
Yeah.
It's some great stuff too.
Oh. You can't sell that.
Why not? It's barely used.
Oh, gently used items don't mean half-used cans of hairspray. I'm sorry. You have some great stuff here, though. Let's go over some details. Trinkets and Treasures is September 25th, and you can sell your gently used items. Everything you have here is beautiful, and I love everything you have except for your paint, your half-eaten mints, and your hairspray. So, you think you got it?
Yeah, so it can't be consumable or already consumed.
No.
Or hazardous.
You got it.
Can't be chemicals.
No.
All right.
I think you got it.
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
And one other thing, employees can't sell at the Trinkets and Treasures sale. So don't forget to mark your calendars for the Trinkets and Treasures sale happening September 25th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sign-ups begin September 1st. It is a $5 table fee if you'd like to sell your items. Don't forget, and we'll see you there.
Next, we visit with a Shell Point resident who tells us about flying high on bombing missions as a radio and communications specialist in World War II. Listen to Dr. Iver Brook as he recounts being a strapping young man eager to fight for his country after going to college and hearing the news of Pearl Harbor.
I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Got my interest in the outdoors at Scout Camp, and but I ended up at the College of William and Mary in September 1940. Very green. I can't describe how naive most of us were. We didn't really know very much about the world, and I think the whole idea of military never entered our mind. I know that I was aware of the military because I lived in a section of Brooklyn which was very close to Fort Hamilton. All I know is that on the day of Pearl Harbor, I was sitting with two other students in a study room in our dormitory, and we were preparing for a physics examination. And somebody came in and said, "They bombed Pearl Harbor." You know, where's Pearl Harbor? And of course, I was just 18. I was very enthusiastic I was going to do something, but I needed my mother's permission. It wasn't until the following May that my mother finally consented. She was a recent widow. My dad had died in July of 1941. And I went up to Richmond hitchhiking and enlisted in the Air Force Reserve. And I knew that I couldn't pass a flight physical, so I had a waiver that said navigation only, which suited me fine. I'd be flying, I'd be an officer, and navigators are very important. And, however, we waited around and we weren't called up for active duty until February of 1943. But basic training was a joke. I mean, all we did basically was march and PT. I think we went up to the firing range one time, but they didn't even have, I believe we fired the standard British rifle it was an Enfield, much heavier and clumsier. We fired, I think, one clip each and marched. They had divided all of the people in the Air Force Reserve into I think 5 groups. Group 1 of the people who had the most science and mathematics, to the fellows who were drama majors, but basically had no scientific or mathematical background at all. And so we went from Miami Beach to Springfield, Ohio, where we were in a group called College Training at Wittenberg College. We stayed there just about 2 months, went down to San Antonio for classification. Most of the men with us ended up in pilot training, but because I had the waiver and I can't cross my eyes to this day, I could not pass a flight physical. I could pass all right for navigation, but not for flying or for being a bombardier. So I ended up shipped to Shepherd Field, Texas, where they reclassified us, and I ended up in radio school at Scott Field. They took a group of us, they took 12 of us, and sent us to Boca Raton to become radar specialists, and we were going to be radar observer gunners. And we went through that training. I went from gunnery school, which was Yuma, Arizona. By the time you get up in the morning, usually, let's say 4 o'clock in the morning. So you get up very early, you get dressed, you get food, briefing, get to the crew locker room where you get all of your flight gear on, and you go out to the flying line, and usually go out to a ramp taxi, which is a flatbed trailer that you throw everything on, and they take you off and drop you by your revetment, and you check out your equipment. The radio operator has to make sure that everything is tuned to the right frequencies, and the main thing you want to make sure of is that you have the right air-sea rescue frequencies. At that point, you're all checked out, and you wait until they get a signal from control, and you start to taxi out. You've got, let's say, 36 aircraft. You're going around this long perimeter strip. You get to the end of the runway, and plane takes off, another one behind, but if you take 36 aircraft and they're a minute apart, that's better than a half hour if you're at the tail end. Then you start to climb so you can get into formation. And England is characterized by lots and lots of cloud, so that oftentimes you might have to go up 15,000 feet through these clouds to break out of the clouds so you can get into formation. You get up into above your 15,000 feet, you put on your oxygen. And then you start to climb further. The group gets together, lead squadron, high squadron, low squadron, and you try to cross the English Channel at 20,000 feet. On our first mission, of course, the toggleer sits in this glass bulb in front of the airplane. There's nothing out there except this bulb. And Bill O'Connor, as we come down the IP, he looks out and his comment was, "Holy," he said, "we could taxi on that stuff," talking about the flak was so dense, it would just look like a black runway in front of us. And as we get there, you can hear the whoop, and the plane will jump. And then it's like somebody throwing pebbles against the tin roof. That's what flak hitting the aircraft sounds like, the smaller pieces. And I keep on thinking about that because it's that, and you can smell the cordite from the explosions. And I'm looking out the bomb bay doors because one of the things the radio operator has to do is to say bomb bay clear after the bombs are dropped. And I can't see very much of the bottom from the middle of the radio room, but when I'm watching for the bombs, I'm looking down at the ground. And I'm wondering, why was I throwing out all of this chaff, which is to disturb the radar, when you could see perfectly clear from here? You could see the gun flashes 5 miles below. After you finish drop your bombs, everybody makes a big turn, changes the altitude, and that's when you start to look for fighters again. I flew 24 missions, and I never fired the gun, my machine gun. However, when we came back from that first mission, I was asked to describe the flak. This is in briefing. And I said, I remembered what the definitions were. And I said, I called it light, accurate, and tracking. And the experienced co-pilot looked at me and he said, "Buddy, you don't ever want to see it any heavier than that." We had like 60 holes in the aircraft.
If you'd like to hear Iver Brook's life story in greater detail, you can listen to a special radio interview he did recently on WFGC. Tune in to the reading channel of the Shell Point Cable TV System's Channel 89. And now it's time to cover all of today's happenings, menus, and Village Church connections.
Hello and happy Thursday. I'm Katelyn Van Scoy, and this is the happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm going to let you know all the activities for Thursday. At 7:15, we have a Health Connections class starting out our day with Bend, Breathe, and Balance in the Health Club. And then at 8 o'clock, we have Men's Golf Association meeting at the Shell Point Golf Club. And we have round robin doubles tennis at 8 o'clock at the Woodlands Tennis Courts. The Paddlers Club will head out for their weekly outing from the kayak storage at 8:30. 9 o'clock, Samba, the card game, will be played in the Sable Room at the Woodlands. And shuffleboard is available on the shuffleboard courts at 9:15. 9:30, current events will be discussed in the game room at the Woodlands. And another 9:30 activity is ladies match play tennis at the Woodlands Tennis Courts. Introduction to beginning line dancing will occur in the Health Club at 9:45. And following that is basic line dancing at 10:15 in the Health Club. Our Susie Q heads out to Fathoms and Through the Locks at 10:45. You do need to sign up for that. We move to the afternoon for Mahjong at 12:45 in the Library Lounge. That's in the Resident Activity Center. And at 1 o'clock, we have Pavilion Auxiliary Orientation. That'll be in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. We move to 1:30 for a Health Connections class, Aqua Pilates Stretch, at the LifeQuest Aquatic Center. The Stamp Ministry will be gathering in the Stamp Room in the Island Tunnel at 2 o'clock. And at 2:45, the Health Connections class, Balance and Mobility Training Level 2. That's down in the Health Club and currently full. A seamstress will be here for her weekly service at 4 o'clock. She'll be in the Osprey Room. And at 4:30, Alcoholics Anonymous will be meeting in the Sable Room at the Woodlands. Pinochle will be played in the Library Lounge at 6:30. And we round out our Thursday with a 7 o'clock Trailblazers Bible study that'll be held in the game room at the Woodlands. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Menus for Thursday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is braised pork with black-eyed peas and seasoned greens. The dinner special is the Crystal Carving Board for $13.95, and the soup of the day is beef rice. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a turkey Reuben with fries for $7.75. The dinner special is Thai night for $8.75. Dinner specials in the Palm Grill are grilled New York strip for $19.95 or shrimp portofino for $13.95. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Hi, welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm Andy Hawkins, the senior pastor of the Village Church, and I'm going to share some devotional thoughts with you from the Psalms. You know, it's remarkable how transparent the Psalms are when expressing one's innermost feelings. David, the author of about half of the Psalms, was especially transparent. What is remarkable is how poorly we do with such transparency. In general, we in the church put on a happy face, pretend that all is well with my soul, and seldom do we share with anyone that we are miserable inside. It's often a front that we put up. In any congregation are people, my pastoral experience would indicate many people, who are dying on the inside. And yet we are afraid that if we were to share such experiences, our fellow parishioners would think less of us, some of them even concluding that we were not even Christians. You know, there are many reasons why we might experience what some authors have termed spiritual depression. It may be the ordinary burdens of life which seem to have gotten out of hand, decisions to make, finances to manage, that sort of thing. It may be burdens that we carry for the well-being of our families. It may be a health crisis, but it may also be a general sense of the absence of God. That's what we mean by spiritual depression. We don't feel His presence. We wonder if He even cares about me. It's one thing to go through periods of time in which challenges and trials and difficulties crop up. But if we knew God was going through those times with us, they would be more bearable and more encouraging. But if we had those trials and thought God was absent and uncaring, that would certainly be discouraging. And that's the essence of spiritual depression. While we struggle to share those experiences with anyone, it's interesting that David had no such problem. His transparency is alarming, and we find it displayed over and over again in the Psalms. Now, he was a man after God's own heart, and he had no hesitation in expressing his innermost troubles, especially when he was spiritually depressed. Psalm 12 is one of those psalms which I addressed recently, and in that psalm, David is complaining that he is alone in his concern for the things of God, that everyone around him uses words which are at least vain and at worst blasphemous. But in Psalm 13, the next psalm, David takes it even a step farther. At least in Psalm 12, it was him and God. In Psalm 13, it's just him. God is out of the picture. He's AWOL. He's absent as far as David could tell. He feels abandoned by God, and he has felt this way not just for an afternoon or an evening, but for quite some time. Verse 1 says, "How long, O Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" The expression about hiding his face from David indicates that David has, for quite some time, failed to experience the blessing of God. It's a remarkable Hebrew idiom. For God to hide his face from us means that we have lost his blessing. We remember that wonderful blessing from the book of Numbers in chapter 6, where it says, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace." Well, David wonders where that peace has gone, and his complaint begins to expand. In verse 2, he says, "How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day? How long will my enemy be exalted over me?" He has had to counsel himself. In other words, to talk to himself, trying to convince himself that all is well when he knows it's not. And so he wonders, how long must he try to talk himself out of his depression? From the time he wakes up in the morning to the time he goes to bed at night, he's overwhelmed by sorrow. This is depression. This is spiritual depression. Perhaps his sorrow is because he is on the run from his enemies. We know there were at least 2 periods in his life, for extended periods of time, when he had no home to which to go and no place to lay his head, because either Saul and his men or Absalom and his men were trying to kill him. Whatever the circumstances, his sorrow is overwhelming. Well, what to do in such circumstances? Well, David does the only thing he can do. He prays. Verse 3, he says, "Consider and answer me, O Lord my God, and lighten my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death, and my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken." This was an act of will on David's part. I'm sure he didn't feel like praying, but he prayed. He said, "God, if you're there, consider me, think of me. Help me to see you again. Open my eyes to your presence." His reasoning was so that his enemy, which was also God's enemy as well, would triumph. Now, when we're having those episodes of spiritual depression, we need first to share them with someone we trust, a believer in Jesus who will join us in praying. This person might be a trusted friend or maybe even a pastor or professional counselor. But then we need simply to pray. It may be hard. It may be simply an act of the will when our emotions are far from ready. But we must pray. As it turns out, David's prayer is the fulcrum on which this whole psalm and on which his whole countenance turns. For the result of his prayer is that God does light up his eyes and reminds him that God hasn't left him. And it leaves him with the confidence that he will again have his countenance lifted. He says, "But I have trusted in your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me." I don't know that David experienced these emotions immediately, but I rather think that he did not, but he knew that he would. Once again, he would trust in God's loving kindness, that he would again rejoice in God, that he would again find it in him to sing. In other words, he had hope that he would come out of that spiritual depression. And he could reason that way because he knew that God had dealt well with him in the past. Verse 6 says, I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So when you find yourself in a similar spiritual condition, do what David did. Pour out your heart to someone you trust. And then pray. As an act of your will, pray and find the confidence that you will emerge from this time and that you will rediscover the joy of your salvation in Jesus. I hope you're encouraged by that message from the Psalms, and we hope to see you very soon in the Village Church so that we can be the instrument of encouragement for you in the future. God bless you all.
Thanks for joining us here on Shell Point today for Thursday, August 27th. We'll return tomorrow when resident Jack Hubbard will tell us about the summer concert coming next month with pianist Dick Hyman. And we'll recap the top stories from all this week. Until then, I'm Rich Nation.
And I'm Mary Kay Grimaldi. On behalf of the entire staff here at Shell Point TV, we hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again here tomorrow.